Democratic Representative Joaquin Castro told Powerhouse Politics podcast hosts. ABC News political director Rick Klein and chief White House and Washington correspondent Jonathan Karl, that the crisis which President Donald Trump described Tuesday night as one of the heart and soul is really a crisis of a different nature, one of chaos. There is a humanitarian crisis, but otherwise there's no crisis of chaos. There's no crisis of a bunch of people coming in to pillage people, Castro said. Castro, chairman of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, led a Democratic delegation to visit a Border Patrol facility in Alamogordo, New Mexico, Monday to investigate the death of 8-year-old Felipe Gomez Alonzo. Felipe, who died on Christmas Eve, was the second child to die in December under U.S. Customs and Border Protection custody. Castro's visit was just days ahead of Trump's trip to the U.S.-Mexico border Thursday. Castro said he's glad Trump is going to visit the border to see for himself what's going on there. Catarina Gomez via Ab Felipe Gomez Alonzo, then 7, is seen near Laguna Brava in Yalambajic, Guatemala in this undated photo. More, Trump to visit border, make primetime speech in Pierre Blitz for border wall. Even the Republicans in those border towns, even the conservative folks in those border towns will tell him that there is no crisis there at the border except for a humanitarian one, Castro said. We do have a humanitarian crisis at the border. But that's very different from the language in the political arguments that the president is using, scare tactics, fear-mongering, scapegoating, to try to justify building a wall that most Texans do not want, Castro said. Most Americans do not want, and from my district, even more people don't want it. So we're talking about two different things. More, Trump faces political emergency of his own making and fight over border wall. Analysis, Carolyn Castor. President Donald Trump gives a primetime address about border security, 8/2018, at the White House in Washington. Jan. While the president's speech on immigration touted women and children as the biggest victims, by far, of our broken system, the president also cited instances of undocumented immigrants committing gruesome crimes. Castro refuted Trump's characterization of people's motives for crossing the U.S.-Mexico border. It's not millions of people coming over here to try to rape and kill and hurt Americans. That is exactly the wrong kind of language to be using, and it's the language that has led us into the worst chapters of American history and the worst chapters in world history, Castro said. More, fact-check, Trump's primetime speech on the government shutdown. While Castro said he's currently focused on his work in the House, he didn't rule out the possibility of running for Senate in the future. Castro's identical twin brother, Julian Castro, is expected to make an announcement about a 2020 presidential run on January. No plans for that right now, Castro said. 12. Every Wednesday, ABC Radio and iTunes bring you the Powerhouse Politics podcast, which includes headliner interviews and in-depth looks at the people and events shaping U.S. hosted by ABC News chief White House correspondent Jonathan Karl and ABC News political director Rick Klein. Politics.